Guys, have anything you want to discuss? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Okay, so give me a second. Let's do it in JSV itself, okay? Alright, I'm not fully sure if we can access the local storage through this, but we'll give it a try. I'll not create a to-do app, but I'll just give a quick kind of simulation of it. Okay, so you'll have like a task array, right? Task 1, task 2, and task 3. Okay, so you'll have a UL probably. I hope that's how everybody's done it. And yeah, let's use the get element by ID. So task list to document dot get element by ID, and this one will have a task list over here. And what we can do is create a for loop. Let I 0, I less than task dot length, and I plus. I hope everybody's familiar with this syntax right now. Looping, and all you should be familiar with at least what each part means. If not, just stop me in between and you can ask. And you can do task list dot inert HTML. Let's interpolate this. Yeah, okay, so ignore these errors. Not sure why this, I think 6. Okay, it's working here. You can see it's coming on the side, right? If I add one more over here, say task 4, it should give me that, right? So this is how you expect it to work. You must have created inputs that pushes into the array, and you must have added individual delete buttons for each task that slices at a particular index as well, right? So now imagine you add another one called task 5, and it's obviously in your array over here. And if I reload this, actually all this code will go away. I'll not do that, but in a real case, when you reload this, the file will run from the start. Since the task 5 was not there in the initial load of your JavaScript file, it will just have task 1 to 4, and task 5 won't be available. So it will show only these 4 over here. So to avoid this, I mean to make sure your tasks don't get lost, what you can do is you can use your client-side storage features like local storage, and then there is session storage, there is your indexed DB, and obviously your good old cookies. Yep. Cookie, let's take it from empty. You don't necessarily have to see it over here. Just come to your browser, Yeah, just go to your inspect tools and go to application, and you can see all these storage features over here. So the most used ones are your local, your session, usually index, but you don't see these much, and then your cookies. Cookies are very commonly used, right? Your client side, that is in your browser, you have the local session index, and I'm not exclude this shared. Maybe shared is between different tabs, but yeah. So these ones, everything except your cookies are client side storage. Your cookies over here are shared for each request that you make to the server. So I okay, we cannot view because this is still an open tab. Let's go directly to profile. Good. Okay. So we have this here, right? So your cookies, whenever you go to your server, things better drawn out. I mean, usually we use Jamboard, right? So a different approach over here. Let's go with blue. Okay, this is one, and then we have this. Okay, so this is your browser. I'll just put a B. This is your server. Okay, so you will come to this is your browser. You enter the URL to the website. It goes to your server. This middle process is also pretty cool. It's a really big one. We'll explore that also later. Okay, so you go to your server. It sees how you're looking for the landing page, so it will take the landing page and it will give it to you over here. Okay, assuming don't assume that it's login, logout, nothing like that. Okay, so when you're sending this HTML file, along with this file, it will send you cookies. So these cookies contain information about your current session, when did you request the page, and then it can include like analytics stuff as well. So if you come to your cookies, you can see this underscore GA underscore RT. So GA basically stands for Google Analytics. These are important for the Google APIs to know like how you're interacting with the browser on all that, and it's kept in cookies because sometimes it's not necessary for the browser alone to collect this data. It can also be exchanged with your server as well. So it is sent to your server. When you come here, the cookies are sent to you. It's registered in your cookies in your client side. Okay, it's saved over here. These ones. Now, suppose say from my profile page over here, I go into my settings. I guess there should be a setting. Okay, account details. So I went into this page. This page over here, it's another request, right? So for that page, it will take the same cookies which I got from the server. Okay, so let's call this A, and the same cookies are also sent back from the server, from the browser to the server. So why this is useful is it helps the server identify who you are, what's your current session, and how you're using the website and all these stuff. Okay, so this is the main difference between cookies. Cookies kind of like hybrid storage between client and server. Then obviously you have your local storage. Local storage, it's useful for storing for your entirety of your browser history. So basically, if I close this tab, if I come back here, all the stuff over here will still remain. I can just show it to you. Okay, I close that tab. Now I'll open it again, and you see these stuff are still here, right? And in session storage, what it is, until I close my tab or my browsing history, I mean the current browser session, it will still be there. So the name itself implies, right, session storage. Once I close it, all of these will disappear, and when I open the browser again, maybe there must be some scripts written to initialize this again and use it. Okay, and obviously you have your index db also. If you're familiar with sql, index db is very similar to it. It has like a uh, store table format of storage, so sql in your browser, but I guess it's not being used much nowadays. I mean, there are specific uses. I haven't explored it myself, but yeah, feel free to look into this. But for starting out, your local storage and your session storage should be pretty good enough. When you're getting into backend, that time cookies, we'll look at more detail in cookies. And let's just see how to use it. Okay, so I have this. Okay, what I'll do is I will default class equals this. Okay, then I'll just delete this. I'll do a local storage dot get item. I guess that was the syntax. Yep, get item. Get item, and I just pass in a key. So if you remember, we studied objects, right? There is a key value pairs associated. So imagine local storage as just one big object that you see over here, and all of this is the key research. See, it's written on the top as well. So OS page view underscore page views has value 207. Boot local has this object value over here. Is opted out has a boolean value called false. All these, right? So I can get the value with the key over here. So I'll just put my task over here. It's still empty, right? Let's check our application local storage, right? So there is nothing here, no? So I'll just file the HTML. So how do I know that the task exists or not? Okay, so we can do a simple console. Yeah, so it gives me null, and then I'm trying to access the value type error because over here I'm calling tasks as an array, right? I'm trying to access the index of specific array elements, but then it's actually null at this line because it does not exist, right? It's not there, so it's giving me cannot read property of line. Okay, that's happening here. Okay, so you can prevent this by just putting a simple ternary operator. You can use a if statement also. Ternary is a bit more cleaner. So json.parse or an empty array. Okay, run this. Yeah, so it's consoling null. That's default. So if I go to my output, also still empty, but the error is gone. Okay, so if you see what is happening in the code, I'm getting local storage, then I'm putting in the ternary operator. It's null, right? So null means false. So we'll go to the false condition first. So if it does not exist, it's an empty array, or we can do like this also. If it does not exist, take the default task. Yep. Okay. But now if it does exist in my local storage, I'm using a method called json.parse, and I'm passing in the same local storage.getItem over here. Why I cannot pass it directly, right? So over here you can see it looks like object, but in actuality it is stored as string. So json.parse is a method that converts your arrays and objects which are in the form of a string to the actual JavaScript arrays and objects, right? Same way, there's another method called json.stringify, which can convert your JavaScript arrays objects to the string equivalent. We'll take a look at that. Okay, so for now I have these. What I'll do is I'll put a if statement. Okay, we'll just let you go. If it does not exist, then local storage dot set item json dot, I mean, let's just try without. Let's see what happens if I don't pass it. Okay, Okay, yeah. Right, my bad. The first argument is the key. So dot set item takes in the two arguments, the key over here and the actual value over here. Okay, so I save this, done. Right, so it's giving me syntax error, unexpected token, it's not a valid uh, JSON over here. So it's expecting a string actually, not the actual array over here. So that's why we are getting this error. So we can just do JSON dot stringify task. Okay, clear. Right, good. Okay, ignore that for now. Okay, so you see the tasks are getting set, right? And this should be default task. Good. Yep. Okay, so you see now it's an array. It looks like an array, but when I double click to edit, you can see I have to edit it just like a normal string only over here. I'll go back to the output. It's since my default task and my task in my local storage, they are very similar. It doesn't show the difference, right? So let me just delete the task 5 over here, update it, and now you see I ran the code and only the 4 tasks shown up. So what actually happened now was uh, my task does exist in local storage. Uh, so this becomes false, right? So it doesn't have to set the default task from start. Then it goes into here to check if the tasks are there. So my task does exist. Then take those tasks, convert the stringify array into an actual array, JavaScript array over here, and then I'm directly assigning it over here. Okay, so that's why it's showing task 4. If I wanted to add, I can probably do like task 5, task 6, task 7, save, and run. That. Good. I mean, you can see it's here my default tasks are 5, but my local storage tasks are 7. So now whenever you reload this, I mean this is my actual reload, the run with JS button over here. It looks into the local storage and gets my task. Now in session storage, what will happen is when I close this tab, if I store it in session storage and I close this tab, all this data will get erased. In local storage, even if you close this tab, it will remain over there. Any doubts with this? With the client side storage part?
Bhaiya, actually I
Yeah.
wasn't there at the start. So like what application have you opened up? Like what website you're showing the session storage and local storage part? Which
Th
like how did you
this one?
open that?
This one? Over the right side?
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah, can you
yeah.
tell both the left side also what's that? Like
Left side is just a website called JSPin, so I can run my HTML, CSS, all this in one panel without having to create a project in VS Code, just in my browser directly. And your right side is your inspect Chrome Developer Tools. In your Chrome Developer Tools, just go to your application, and you have the access to the storage and parts of your browser.
okay, Bhaiya.
Any other doubts, guys, regarding client-side storage?
Bhaiya, can you explain it again? Like actually what's happening? I didn't get it.
Which part, like local storage?
local storage, like how did you connect it and how the data is coming?
Cool, cool. I'll show it with that example itself. Okay. So
Okay.
imagine this is your to-do list over here. So by default, my app will have some to-dos just for showcase purposes. Uh, Assuming this user is visiting my browser for the first time, so local storage will not be there, right? They will not have created any task previously. So what will happen is this condition will become true. Local storage dot get item, my task. This will return null because it does not exist. So null is basically false. Not of null is true. So this condition over here will get executed. What I've set is uh, what I've set is like local storage dot set item. Set item takes in two arguments, the key and the value. So the key is obviously my task that you can see over here, and the value is the default task that the user should have. Now local storage only allows you to store items in form of strings, not of any other format, the object or array or boolean. You have to convert into a string and then only store it. So that's why we're using the json.stringify method over here that takes this array and converts it as a string. Okay. Then what I'm doing is in this line, I'm just doing a check local storage dot get item and then a ternary operator. So see if it's there. If it's there, then get the value from the local storage and parse it. So it's converting the string back to an array in this case. If it's not there, then assign the default task from the start. Okay. Then this is pretty straightforward, right? I'm using the DOM API to get the UL with the ID task list, and then I'm just looping it over here for each of the tasks, that is either the default or the ones that user saved. You will have I mean the task for you was to write functions to the input to save or remove the task, and just add those to the UL over here like this.
Okay, भैया.
Yep. Okay, all right. Let's take a look at those HOFs then.
Bhaiya, uh,
Yeah,
like what is the difference between local storage and session storage?
cool, cool. That's right. So local storage, right? Now assume I close this browser and I come back here. I guess let me show it you. I'll just come here, paste this. So I'm in a completely different browser tab, right? I'll just go to my application again. It's still here. So but now if I go to my this browser over here, come to my session storage, I'll just add one. Okay, so right now this is in my session storage. I'll just close it, close, and come back to it again. It's not actually here, right? Now I go to my local storage, my task is here. So the main difference is, as the name implies, session means only for the current browser session that you're opening. If I close this tab and open again, all the values that I stored in my session storage will be cleared, whereas if I store it in my local storage, even if I close this tab, even after I just give me a second. Yeah, so even if I close this tab, or even if I shut down my system, this local storage part will still remain while my session storage will not. That's the main difference. If you want an example, let's see Instagram itself, right? So Instagram, when you log in, you'd want to store your user hypothetically. It's security wise it's not good, but just assume your profile details you'll want to store in your local storage, because you're not going to log out that often, right? but then the notifications, your notifications depend on each session that you join in. So and I don't need to have all the data every time I come to the browser, right? So I can store them in session storage. So for that session notifications I can see, and then it will get clear. There's no use of storing it again for the next one because you've already read them. Then again in your next session you'll get new notifications, you've read them, so why store it again? So this is the main difference between local and session storage.
Understood, भैया.
Cool. Okay. Any other doubts with the client side storage? Okay. Cool. I'll take it as a yes. Hopefully you guys understood this difference. Okay. We look at HOFs now. I guess I can just share this file again. Let's take a look at the order functions. Okay, so we'll first take a look at for each. So now this one I did over here, right? I'll just comment this out for now. It will disappear. I can use task dot for each, and this for each method only works on arrays, and this one takes a callback function. I guess we talked about callback during the recruitment, right? It's even for the it's very similar to your add event listener. After you put click, you pass in a function, right? So it's the same thing over here. I'll just pass in a function, and this function takes in certain arguments, like how your event listener took the event object as an argument. Over here you can take the actual item, the index, and the array itself. Okay, this is a normal traditional function, and then I can just do the same task list dot inner HTML equals tactics it's item in this case, and then slash item. Cool. So you see it works the same as my for loop. Yeah, I'm going to be honest, for these for loops are usually performance wise better, but this for each method is usually more readable than your traditional for loops. So it's really a very small millisecond difference. You don't have to worry about it since you're only dealing with small size arrays with with really less items, not like 10,000 or 50,000, even more than that. So you don't have to worry about which one you're using, for or for each. Okay. You guys have any doubts with this syntax? Just let me know. I can actually stop and explain. Like, it's pretty straightforward. You have a method on every array by default. It's called a for each, and it takes in a callback function. That callback function is passed in three things: the item, index, and the array. For simplicity's sake, let's console log and see item, index, array, and close the output. You'll see the console. Okay, so item is your task one. So this is my task one. Each item of the array it goes to. So it's very straightforward in the syntax itself. Task is my array, and in that task array, for each of the item, do this particular action or this particular function should be executed for each of the item. So it takes the task one. The index is the 0 because That's how arrays work, right? Then it passes the whole array again. So suppose say you might want to do some manipulation within the array at the same time. You'd want to take this, but usually you won't see the third argument being used, so you can skip that altogether. Let's clear and run. Right. Then task 2 is obviously at the first index, task 3 at the second index, and so on, right? Index method, maybe you'll use, maybe you'll not use, but in this case we don't need it, so we'll just take it out. So that became even more simple, right? So each of these tasks are individually consoled. So for each task, what I'm doing is I'm taking the item from each task and I'm just appending to the task list the unordered list over there, right, as a li list item tag. I mean, this was the first one. There are a few more, but you guys have any doubts with this? This is the most simplest higher order function you can see. I totally forgot about this. I keep forgetting. Yeah, this one. Just put in the chat box also, it's pretty cool. Okay, cool. I am assuming all of you have understood for each. Okay. Then you have something called map. Map. Okay. It's not your actual geographical map or anything. In this context, map actually means transform. Transform or to manipulate one array to another different type of array over here. Okay. So now suppose say okay, we'll stop with the default task. We'll just use numbers array over here. Okay. Good. So I have an array from numbers 1 to 10, right? And suppose say I want an array which only consists of the even numbers. Can anybody tell me what their approach would be? Just tell me, we'll code it out right now. Anyone, please? I want another array which will contain only even numbers from the first one. Okay, it's an empty array by default. So I want all this stuff, only the even numbers from this inside this. Can anybody tell me what your approach would be? There is no wrong answer, just give it a try.
Can we do it by opening a function, like doing it by function, creating
Creating a function as in, like, can you give me like doesn't have to be syntactically correct, just tell me what your flow would be.
like array dot inner HTML.
No, I don't want these
We
to be
create a
here.
function.
What my actual output should be, like this array should contain 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10. That's what I'm looking for. How would I get those specific even numbers alone from this array over here to my array even? Forget about the HTML stuff now. It's all just JavaScript now. If you can put in the chat box also. Okay, I'll just go in assumption that I don't know HOFs. Okay, I'm just starting web dev, so I don't know any of the high order functions. So what I would have done is created a for loop. Let I equals 0, I less than dot then I keep messing up the length spelling. I mean, yeah, I plus plus, and over here I'll just put a if condition if I uh, modulo 2 over here, meaning if it comes as 0, meaning it's odd, obviously. So what I can do is I just uh, wrap this and put a not, and then do a even dot push and I. Okay, so let's console log it over here. Even. I'll take this console log out of here. Cool. Okay, so you see this is happening, right? So what I'm doing here is okay, this is a bit complex. Let's not do this. Is not, I mean, is equal to 0. I guess this should be better. Good. Okay, so logic is pretty straightforward, right? So first I'm looping through the array over here from numbers 1 to 10. Then I'm putting a if condition. This everybody should have done, right? The even condition. So I modulo 2, meaning if the remainder of the number okay, it's not I, it's more of array of I. That, my bad. Okay, not equal to 0, I guess. Yeah, okay, so if it's even in this case, then only push it to my even array over here. Okay, see, the first one worked because index always starts at 0, right? That's what I did here, so my bad. Since it's starting at 1, I had to change the logic over here. Okay, so once it's even, then push it to my even array over here. Okay, so gonna be honest, this is not that readable, right? So what an alternative approach to this is called your map method. As I mentioned, your map method is used to transform arrays from one form to another. So in this example, I want to transform my array of numbers 1 to 10 to an array of even numbers alone. So I'll just do const or even is equal to array.map, and it takes in the same format function for each number, and index also you can do, but we don't need that here. Okay, return yeah, we'll just put a return. So num percentage to then return num and return null. Okay, it's running here. Let's give this again. I'm not sure if this is my net or something. Okay, my net has become slow. there was a UL, right? Very fast. Oh, okay. This my bad syntax. Console. Good. This null part we can just I guess it is written undefined. Or just skip it on this. Okay, let's see this over here. Okay, undefined is coming because I'm not returning anything else. That's why it's giving undefined. Map is not probably not the best example over here. There's another method that we'll take a look at. So suppose say I wanted to transform this one by squaring each item, each number, and return it. So in that case, what I can do is instead of putting a if condition here, I can just put return num to the r2, right? So it'll give me 1, 4, 9, 16. That's the square of each number over here. So I can transform one array into another array instead of writing these for loops over here. Okay, so let's not call it square, yeah. Okay, so this is my second higher order function method. First is for each, second is map. I guess Kevin did use for each, no, in the to-do session. Any doubts so far with these higher order functions? Any doubts so far with these two ones? You can just put a yes or no in the chat box also, because these are really important. You'll end up using these a lot, both in your backend code and in your front end code, especially in React. So that's why I'm kind of emphasizing whether you guys have understood this or not.
Bhaiya, can you explain the mapping again? How does the map
Yeah,
function
cool,
work?
sure. Oh yeah, I was doing it right. Okay, so basically the general meaning of map function over here means to transform one array into another type of array over here. So if I have this array from numbers 1 to 10, and my goal is to square each number over here. I can do it by in two ways: create another array, empty array, and then loop through the normal one using a traditional for loop, square each number, and then push it to this array using array square dot push, something like that. Or I can use something like the map method. So I'll take in the array, use the map method, which is available by default. I mean, it's an inbuilt method of arrays, and this one, just like your for each, takes in a function which passes in each item of that specific array. In our case it's number, so I just called it number over here. It can be any name you want. If it's a string, you can preferably put it as str something over here. Okay, and I'm just returning num exponential 2, so square each and return. So if you see one major difference in for each, I'm not returning anything, right? Because the for each method, it actually doesn't return an array back. it's returns void, so it's not actually doing anything. Whereas my map method, it actually returns another array from your original array. So if you see, let's hover over this. Yeah, so you see this is my map method over here. In our case it's a number, so it's showing its type as number, which takes in a callback function. Our callback function we already defined down there, and the first value is a number, and then we write our methods inside, and what we are doing is we are returning another number based on the calculations we made inside the function over here. So you can see in the end it's a array of numbers as well. I can pretty much just do this also. Just return a string. I won't. This is actually too big. Num.to string. Okay, so now all of these are strings. I've converted the numbers into a string. So if I hover over the method again, you can see it's a string, an array of strings in this case. So the map methods allows me to transform the current array into a different type of array. That's the big. That's it. That's how you use map. Any doubts? Okay, I think you got disconnected in between. I don't know.
Sorry, Bhaiya.
It's cool, it's cool. Why did you get disconnected?
You explained the mapping. You were explaining the example like how does it work? Like you can change the return like double star to some like string function,
Right,
something
right.
like
So
that.
cool, cool. Okay, it's pretty recent. So it doesn't necessarily have to return a number. I can convert this number as a string and return it as a whole another array. So that's the major idea of map. Transform this array into a different type of array altogether. So this part over here can be depends on your own application use case, where you're using, how you're using, all that. So this is pretty straightforward. So I just, for explanation purposes, I showed you over here. You can see it's squared each of those. Okay. Any doubts with this?
And what were you trying to explain the string? Like you can return a string also, uh,
Right,
like
right.
what
So
type?
it can return a string also. So just because I'm passing through a number array doesn't mean it cannot return a string array as well. So I've just transformed each of the numbers over here to a string using the .toString method, and you can see over here, right? So all of these are strings now instead of numbers. So that's what the map method is, to transform one thing into another.
Understood, Bhaiya.
Okay, good, good. Alright, so this even example was there, right? This is more appropriate for another example called filter. Okay, so this same example would apply over here. So I'm filtering out all the odd numbers and only keeping out the even numbers, right? uh, so I can just do something like const even is equal to dot filter, pass in a function where I take the each number and I return uh, if num percentage to not equal to 0, and let's console log this. Okay, in this case it's equal to yeah. Okay, so this is a pretty straightforward. In my map method I have to return the transformed item. In my filter method I'm only cancelling out or specifically selecting some elements alone, right? So basically what it's doing is, for each of this from 1 2 3, I give a condition. If it's true for 1, it will return 1. If it's true for 2, it will return 2. If it's true for 3, it will return 3, and so on till 10, like that. So in my condition over here, what I've specified is, if the remainder of the number when divided by 2 is 0, meaning it's an even number, then return that number to my new array even over here. So when 1 is divided by 2, do we get 0? No, right? So it's a false condition. So number 1 is not returned. You can see in the output also that number is not here. But then when we go to 2, 2 divided by 2, remainder 0, so condition checks now. So 2 is returned here. So this filter method looks for you to return a boolean value true false, and based on which item it is at, if it's true it will return that item, in our case that number. If it's false, it will not return that item. Okay. Any doubts with this? Okay, I'm hoping no doubts. This should be clear, right? There is actually many more methods, but we have one more topic to cover, right? So I'll just do one more high order function, then we'll move on to the event loop part. So you have something called reduce. Okay. So now suppose I want to add all of this to a total sum, right? So my approach would have been, before knowing reduce method, this should have been my approach. So I'll have like a variable, let's sum initialize to 0, and for each of this sum add the current value I, and then console.log sum. Cool. So it gives 55. From 1 to 10 if you add it, give you 55. Checks out. Okay. But now this also, I suppose I don't want to do this. There's one more method called reduce. Let's just this so dot reduce. Okay, and it's the same way. It takes in the function. In this case, it your first two values are not your item and your index, but they are your previous value and your current value. So we'll just put previous, current. Okay, return previous plus current, and initialize this to 0. Okay, 55. Okay, so how do I, let's just come over here to this. Okay, so I have 1, I have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, finally 10, right? And I told you it takes in two arguments, your previous value and your current value. Okay, so reduce method, I have to initially pass in previous value, that is my first value, over here 0. It's not compulsory, you can skip it out, it will take it 0 by default. Okay, so it's 0 by default, and my current value is 1. So in this case, my current is the actual index value over here. So it starts at 0, meaning the previous value is 0, and my current value is 1, the first element of the array. Okay, so, and my function, what is designed to do in this case, is to return the previous value and the current value over here, the addition of those two. Okay, so it adds these two, and then this becomes my new previous. Okay, so it becomes 1. This new previous goes back to your second one over here, so this is 1, and my current value is 2. Basically this one is reflected over here. Then my logic is to add this 2, it will become my new previous 3. So on, this goes there, 3 comes here, 3 plus 3 becomes 6, then this goes there, 6, plus 4 gives 10. Then again my new previous value is 10. 10 plus the current value of the array is 5, it returns 15. So on it goes, and finally returns me 55. Okay, so I mean this is a very general case. In you it also looks like the for loop is much better than the reduce method, but there are certain cases where you'll have to go deep into an object, In that cases your reduce method is much better than your traditional for loops. You'll The use case for loop, I mean the reduce method is very rare, but you will come across it. Okay, so these are the most common ones that you'll see out there. There's obviously something called dot find, I guess, yeah, find some, every, all these are some of the high order functions for arrays. I will add this to the resources so you can refer to them. Okay, so far any doubts with these? Any doubts with these high order functions so far? Okay, I have two devices. Let's move on to that, how your code is executed, right? Synchronous versus asynchronous. We did see this. I'm just writing this as a mouse, so I'm having small difficulty. Okay, so in general, this is how your JavaScript engine is inside. Okay, so you'll have a bunch of code lines written here. So this, imagine this is your code. Okay, so this is your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so all of these are pieces of code. They can be functions, they can be console logs, anything. Okay, so what happens is we discuss, right? Assume all of this to be synchronous. Synchronous means they are executed one after other, line after line. Okay, so there's something called your call stack. I guess this representation over here would be better. One second. This is the, let's go all the way down to this. Okay, so you have these functions, right? A function called foo. Let's zoom it in. Okay, which console logs first. A function called bar, which takes in a set timeout, which console logs seconds after 500 milliseconds. So this is an asynchronous code because it's not immediately executed, right? Then you have the bars function with console logs third, and just look at the order they're called, right? So bar is called first. General assumption is issued console log second, then foo is called, so first, then third, right? So you come to the actual way this is executed. So your bar function goes into your call stack first. So your call stack is nothing but references to your function and how they should be executed. Yep. Okay. So when you call bar, the reference to the bar function goes into your call stack. But now take a look at what bar is returning. It's returning a set timeout. Set timeout is a asynchronous function. Asynchronous functions take some certain time and they block your thread. JavaScript is single threaded, right? Meaning all the functions run in one single thread, as in okay, this in layman terms, they only one thing, single things can be executed at a point of time. You cannot run two functions at the same time. Okay, so imagine there's a asynchronous function that takes some time. It will block your thread. So come over here. Okay, so this is my JavaScript thread. Like imagine this way. I have one function here, one function here, one function here. All these are synchronous, so they run smoothly all the way till the end of my code. Okay, but now imagine I have a code which is asynchronous at this point of time. Okay, meaning assume it will take 5 seconds to complete. So this what will happen is all my code over here should wait for this particular piece of code to complete, then only this one over here will be executed, right? So JavaScript being single threaded, this is not good. We cannot tolerate such wait times. 5 seconds is quite long, but imagine again application like Instagram where you have to fetch so many information at the same time, right? Your stories, your profile, your notifications, the actual feed content, all these. Usually it's really quick, but imagine your story should load first, your feed will be empty, then only your feed will load. While your feed is loading, you cannot access any other navigation pages, right? So it's not a good feature. So what Chrome and other JavaScript engines have did is they have introduced something called this has been there from the start. It's called the It's called the Web API stack. Yeah, here it is. So your set timeout, fetch functions, set interval, all these comes under the Web API stack over here. So when your bar is executed, it takes the set timeout. Okay, we know that the set timeout returns a console.log. That console.log function goes into your Web API, and the Web API has like a timer over here to wait for the actual function to execute. Meaning here we put 500 milliseconds, so it waits for the 500 milliseconds and it executes your console.log second until it's over. So while that is happening, it goes into your queue. Your queue is specifically for functions that have already been executed, meaning 500 millisecond is over and goes into your queue and it is yet to come to your stack. So call stack is the actual place where all your code is called. You cannot expect them to be called in your web APIs or your queues. Queues is just like your real life. You have to wait for the code to be executed. Okay. So my console.log second goes into my queue, while in between my foo and bars are called over here. They execute console log first, console log third, because they happen immediately. Okay, and only when my call stack is empty, meaning both foo and bars have been executed, then only the console.log from the queue that came from the bar function is taken into the call stack and executed. So that is what the event loop actually is. You can think of it as like a for loop, a while loop that checks for the condition: is stack empty and is the queue not empty. If these conditions are satisfied, take the item in the queue and push it into your stack and execute it. So I know like it's some terms might have gone over your head. It's been a while since I saw these concepts, the specific terms myself. There's like a whole article on this that goes really in depth from your basic event loop to your promises and async await. It actually does another thing called your micro task queue that runs independently of your queue and your web API. It's similar to your normal queue as well. I'll share this link. Make sure you go like fully from 1 to 7. It's really well visualized and explained in this. Okay. So, any doubts? You can put up in the chat box too. It's totally cool. Okay, just I mean, I'm not going to assume all of you understood in this specific case because this will take 2-3 times to read before you get a grasp of it. But till then, I'll just tell you what your next task is. If you finish your to-do list, just start on this one, okay? So we saw the JSON placeholder.type equal, right? So use this API. So just go to the link to it, the post, yeah. Okay, so just create a simple HTML, CSS, and JavaScript website that fetches all this information. Obviously, you'll have to use JavaScript to fetch this, and then display them as I don't know, like a list of posts, like something like an Instagram feed. Don't worry about the images, just the title, the body, these things. Just try to display it as a list over there. I'll try to send a UI simple one, so try to do that. I'll share this link also. Okay, so that was it for today. Any doubts?